Time now is 7:41. Let's stare into the night sky with Dylan Storey. With thanks very much to the Auckland Stardome Observatory. G'day, Dylan.
G'day, Wammo. G'day, Kiwi FM people.
And this time last week we were talking about the shuttle launch. This week, though, we're talking about the shuttle landing. Last night, just before 10 p.m. New Zealand time, the shuttle touched down at the Kennedy Space Centre for the last time. Dylan, did you manage to catch it?
No, I was in the recording studio, but I know you did.
I certainly did, and by the looks of Twitter at the time, many New Zealanders were tuning into NASA TV for...
By the looks of everything, yeah, it was huge, wasn't it?
It certainly was an historic occasion and somewhat emotional. I mean, I didn't blubber all over the computer or anything, but it was certainly like, the shuttle was something that was always there.
Maybe a discreet tear, a corner of the eye.
A discreet tear, yeah. I'm always fascinated though by the process of the shuttle coming into land, because when you think about it, let's say flying from Christchurch to Auckland, the approach starts at say about Hamilton, I suppose. The plane starts descending.
Yeah, it seems to start dipping about Hamilton, eh?
Yeah. Whereas with the shuttle, the landing sort of starts maybe a few orbits of the Earth beforehand.
Yeah.
And then sort of you get into a final approach probably about 3/4 away around the Earth before you get to the Kennedy Space Centre, and then you've got to adjust the shuttle so that it's at a certain pitch, so that when it hits the atmosphere, it's just the underside of the shuttle that's getting the most of the heat. And then
it's just entering the atmosphere is the hard part. That's when it's got to go through all that heat, and the angle's got to be just right.
That's right, and it's going at something like 14 or 15 times the speed of sound as it's hurtling through the Earth's atmosphere. And it's the first time
as we know.
Yeah, that's right.
If one little thing goes wrong, it'll
as we know, back in 2002, I think it was 2003.
Yeah.
And of course,
it goes very wrong.
Yeah, it's at that point that the astronauts start to feel the Earth's gravity for the first time in how many days, which must be a disappointing feeling, coming back down to Earth, as they say,
Well, they reckon, the feeling you get when you've been jumping on a trampoline and then you go and jump on the ground, it's like that times 10.
Yeah.
They describe it as.
And then what it has to do is obviously going so fast, as it gets lower, it needs to start peeling off speed, and so it does these big S-turns. Now, these S-turns aren't within, say, the space of Auckland or whatever. They're across the ocean. These massive big turns just to try and peel off speed.
Yeah, big continent-size swerves.
Yeah. So it was coming in.
Yeah,
actually, just before it did enter the Earth's atmosphere, it came in just below the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand, which is kind of nice. Got to see New Zealand there, and then it comes in over the Pacific, and then over the Central America, and funnily enough, avoided Cuba. Just avoided Cuba. We just diverted Cuba.
Coincidentally.
And I'm giving you a full commentary of what happened here, but the pilot ended up getting on the blower. So hello Houston, and he had this tone of awe in his voice, I suppose, and he was talking about the glow outside the spacecraft, and that's caused by the plasma. You know a little bit more about that, but it's all the ions and whatnot working on the body of the space shuttle. Is that right, Dylan?
Yeah, well, it's just the particles of atmosphere or particles of anything being suddenly raised to such a high temperature that they're basically quickly forming another state of matter.
Yeah. So that would have been pretty choice for them, and then they finally land, and viewers of NASA TV got the view from the shuttle as it was coming in. It was dark because it was just before dawn as it was coming in on the landing strip, so you got to see the perspective from the pilot, but then also, of course, the cameras on the ground as well. And then when it came to a full stop, there was a couple of emotional speeches, one for the pilot, one from Houston, just about how 30 years, how great it's been, and it's and then basically America Hell Yeah kind of, which I thought I'll give them. I mean, fair enough, They're the ones who've been doing it.
You've got to get one of those in, I guess.
Exactly. I'd definitely lend that to them.
Leading the space race for the last 40 years.
Exactly.
40, pretty much, or 41 years almost to the day, actually, since the first moon landing. So you could say NASA's been leading the space race for 41 years.
That's right. And so now it's open to whoever's got the money and the willpower to go up there again in some kind of other space vehicle. Really, it's well open.
And it is looking possible that it could be private enterprise that takes the next step.
Yeah. Maybe Richard Branson, definitely being one of the contenders. I don't
Maybe.
know.
I mean, there's sort of talk about his Space One flights before, but, you know, what they actually do is that they sort of catapult up into the higher reaches of the upper atmosphere, then sort of free float for 30 seconds or something, then fall back to Earth. It's hardly a spacecraft, really. It's this kind of almost space tourism thing.
And of course...
so it's still leagues behind NASA, but... who knows what they're cooking up there in their warehouses?
Well, that, and also, of course, Russia, I suppose, as well, will be working on something. I mean, they've got their capsule at the moment that will be servicing the space station, but they'll be working on something else.
Yeah.
What about China? China's got to be working on something.
That's sort of the big question, isn't it? Is there going to be a new space race? And is China going to come online with the technology?
Mm.
And, well, who knows, really? I mean, NASA does have the weight of experience behind them, and they sort of they've learnt from a lot of mistakes, and so they've got a huge body of knowledge, which is kind of which still sets them in the best position to be leading the space race. You know, for China to suddenly join would have to go through all those stages.
That's true. I only hope that they don't, whatever they do, it's not fully secret. I mean, some stuff has to be secret, but I like the way NASA, in the end, has opened up with their NASA TV, and you get to see everything, you get to hear everything, and that's what engages the world and engages our imagination, I suppose.
And it goes a long way to securing funding for the future, I guess, to actually get people involved. You know, if the space shuttle's just this mysterious thing, then no one's really going to be donating large portions of their tax money to it.
That's right.
So yeah, I think the sort of public domain, and perhaps not a space race at all, but a collaboration between the big superpowers.
That would be nice to see.
Imagine what America, China, and Russia could do together.
Yeah, indeed, and of course travelling off to other planets, Mars being one of them. But heck, who knows? We might end up making it to Pluto, which isn't a planet anymore. It is now a planet. Remind me on that.
No, that's not a planet.
It's not a planet.
No. It's had a new moon discovered around it.
Oh, a new moon. Tell us about that.
Yeah, next thing I want to talk about. So, Hubble Space Telescope had a look at Pluto in I think it was 2005, and discovered that it's been known for quite a while that the light you see from Pluto is actually the light from two bodies. So Pluto has a moon called Charon, which is about half its size. So if you get to Pluto up in the telescope, which is pretty hard to do, but if you can, the dot you're seeing turns out to be the light from two objects. This sort of moon, so it's like a two object system.
Okay.
Pluto and Charon.
Yeah.
Hubble Space Telescope in about 2005 discovered two small dots near these, which were small moons orbiting the main binary pair. So tiny moons orbiting the two main bodies of Pluto.
Yeah.
And Hubble Space Telescope was pointed back at Pluto recently with the hope of discovering a potential ring around it. Didn't discover a ring, but what it did discover was a new moon. Hasn't been found before.
Crikey, is it tiny?
Yeah, it's tiny. Pluto itself is tiny. When Pluto is smaller than our moon, one of the reasons it's not called a planet.
Yeah.
But it's another tiny moon, and it's been tentatively titled P4, meaning the Pluto body number 4. I'm sure they'll come up with a better name eventually.
Yeah.
And so what we think of as Pluto as being one thing actually turns out to be five things actually, isn't it? Pluto, Charon, the two other moons, Nix and Hydra, and this P4. So the significance of this is that it supports the theory that Pluto has a very violent history. This must have been formed by big collisions in the early solar system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of going some way towards shaping our view of how that area of the solar system was formed, what it was like in the early stages. Pluto is part of what we call the Kuiper Belt, which, if you can imagine the asteroid belt, which I think most people know about, the sort of band where all the asteroids orbit the sun between Mars and Jupiter.
Yeah.
Well, you've kind of got another one outside the orbit of Neptune called the Kuiper belt. It's obviously much further away, so it's much more sparse, but you get more large objects in it. So Pluto's there, and all these other dwarf planets are there. And we don't know much about the Kuiper belt.
But we're certainly learning a lot more. That's by the sounds of it.
We're certainly learning a lot more, and we're going to learn a lot more in 2015 when the New Horizons probe goes there. Nothing's ever flown close to Pluto before, so we don't have any sort of information about what the surface is like. There's a lot of speculation on it, but the New Horizons probe will fly past in 2015 and take a whole lot of high-definition photos, and then go on to investigate other areas of the Kuiper belt. So we hope to know a lot more about it then.
Cool. All right. Well, don't forget to pop down to the Auckland Stardome Observatory, perhaps this weekend on a nice clear night. And Dylan Storey, people can continue the conversation with you on Twitter, twitter.com/Dylan Storey. We'll see you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Time now here on